Hannah relocated to France after my wife and I got divorced. My daughter visited New York. She was a born American. Her desire of working in the American publishing sector was realized when she applied for a job at a publishing company at the age of 25. But throughout the interview, she was made fun of by the two interviewers, who said things like, "A publishing company for someone who can't write in English? You still have to work on your English. To speak correctly, you must study more." My daughter controlled her anger despite the hurtful remarks. They would not listen, even when she stated that she is fluent in English and that her nationality is American. The interviewers ultimately told her she was hired after insulting her nonstop, but this was all a part of a bigger plan they planned. My daughter returned from the orientation with an angry and dejected expression on her face and said, "My employee ID name says incompetent." I stormed into orientation after learning about the situation and said, "You're all fired because this building is being demolished." My name is Ryan Johnson. My wife and daughter were very dear to me, but we were divorced when she was in elementary school. It was evident why we divorced. I became so focused on my career that I disregarded my family. My spouse and I traveled to the United States together after our marriage, but she left with our daughter. But I'm happy with my job, and I have no regrets. My goal is to create bridges between nations all over the world and open doors to other cultures. Hannah, my only kid with my French wife, has this similar mentality. I was stationed abroad and employed for a multinational corporation when I met my wife. In general, the people there were amiable and charming. Their strong sense of self-expression and their ability to articulate their goals and viewpoints were well appreciated. Hannah has a bright personality and is equally as gregarious, warming up to people immediately. But while our kid was in primary school, I got divorced from my wife. I appreciate that you constantly work late, but we haven't actually spoken in a while, and I don't see the point in us being together anymore. I believe we should think about taking other routes for our future, she informed me. By deciding to relocate to America and be far from her friends and family, I caused my wife to feel alone. I'd appreciated her views because of this. Following the divorce, Hannah accompanied her mother to her own nation. Hannah Smith replaced Hannah Johnson as her name. She is returning to the United States after almost 15 years. I am excited and anxious at the same time when I arrive at the airport and wait close to the gate where Hannah's flight is scheduled to land. I am really excited to see my kid again, and I didn't get any sleep at all last night. I look for her when her flight lands and people start to come out of the gate. I wave and exclaim, "Hannah, Hannah," with a bright smile as soon as I see her. She leaves her heavy suitcase behind and hurries toward me, excited to meet me. "Dad." We give one another hugs and celebrate our reunion. We depart from the airport together and make our way home. Hannah, who adores comics, American food, and culture, hopes to use her language abilities to work in America. I want to share my love for American culture with the world. I gave Hannah a recommendation for a certain business to assist her realize her ambition. We make the decision to visit that business on our way home from the airport. This is the business Hannah will be interviewing with. I'm getting nervous. You'll be fine if you approach it with your usual bright personality, Hannah. I felt like there was someone watching us as we were talking. I noticed two people in suits staring at us when I turned to face where the stare was coming from. Can I help you with something? It's great holding hands with a young, beautiful foreign woman. They both chuckle to us. No, she's my daughter. Your daughter? Do you have a daughter? In a voice that was hardly audible to us, the woman murmured to the man, "It's a secret relationship." I was irritated, but I held back my rage so Hannah wouldn't see me acting hostile. Do you work at this company? Yes, as you can see, it's a major company, so it's not a place for you. Hey, since a while ago, stop, Hannah. Hannah was one of those people who just had to say what she had to say. She wanted to make it plain that she was uncomfortable. But they could work for the company she might start working for shortly. In addition to my irate daughter, I distinctly recalled that the employee IDs said Patricia Brown and Mary Jones, and I wanted to avoid creating a bad situation. Hannah's anger didn't go away even after we arrived home. Dad, I don't want to go to that company. Those two are the only ones who seem unusual, so don't worry. That company is full with talented people. Really? Yes, I guarantee it. Hannah was practicing for her interview one day in the living room, her look tight. Thinking about how she would present herself, she arranged her experiences and strengths and jotted them down in her notepad. Dad, can you play the role of the interviewer? Got it. To begin, allow me to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Hannah Smith. She attempts to shake hands with me while posing as the interviewer after saying this. Hannah, you should shake hands with the interviewer and make eye contact first when in the United States. Next, during the interview, express interest in what the interviewer is saying. Invading the interviewer's area is impolite. Are you serious? That has a very American sound to it. Well, in comparison to other nations, sure. Additionally, it's crucial to write a thank you note as soon as possible following the interview. I practiced basic interview etiquette with her. Let's go on to discussing how to respond to inquiries. In what way would you answer that query? That's fine, but maybe you should give a more specific example. Hannah prepared her responses to frequently asked interview questions in advance. She improved her responses with my suggestions. All right, let's try again. Hannah put in a lot of practice so she would be confident on the day of the interview. At last, the day of the interview arrived. Bracing herself in the morning, Hannah felt equal parts anxious and excited. Hannah, exude assurance. I offered her a comforting pat on the shoulder and smiled, telling her that she would be all right, no matter what happened. My remarks gave Hannah confidence, and she left with her head held high. This is what my daughter told me after that. She greeted everyone in the interview room with a nice to meet you. It's not like this for us, is it? You're that girl from before, trying to act all grown up, and you came for an interview, said Patricia Brown and Mary Jones, who had earlier treated us badly. I apologize. All right, let's not stress over it. Kindly have a seat. Excuse me, Hannah said, trying not to panic. So, where are you from? I was born in the United States, but when I was 8, my parents divorced, and I moved to my mom's home country with her. Ah, I see. You struck me as a young woman with a strong sense of self. So how important is employment to the people in your mother's country? Efficiency and quality are prioritized in the United States, but how about in your nation? Brown's inquiry momentarily startled Hannah, but she calmly described the work ethic in her mother's nation. Nevertheless, Jones and Brown persisted in their inquiries, demonstrating their unfavorable assumptions about her nation and culture. I've heard that individuals in your nation are slow to react. Is that accurate? If you work negligently, it becomes an issue. While Hannah attempted to defend her heritage, the tone of the interview became more somber. Are you even fluent in English? Are you able to write in English? Jones asked quick inquiries. Yes, I speak Japanese, French, and English. Nevertheless, I'm not particularly good at writing because I've spent the majority of my life overseas. An English language learner who aspires to be employed by a publishing company, you certainly possess nerve. You still need to work on your English, by the way. To speak correctly, you must study more. Hannah was rendered speechless by Brown's unexpected remarks, which shocked and upset her. They kept inquiring about her mother's nation for the remainder of the session. It seemed like they were hinting that the nation and customs of her mother were inappropriate for an American business. Hannah felt discouraged after the interview and thought her efforts had been in vain. She was really stressed and uncomfortable due to the unjust inquiries and remarks that resulted from cultural misinterpretations and prejudices. I'm at my breaking point with this firm. I put a lot of effort into getting ready for the interview, and this is the result. Hannah looked for a long time at the lobby's atrium through watery eyes. Just as she was going to depart and settle herself a little, she heard her name called from behind. Miss Smith. Hannah Smith. It was the obnoxious Brown. Yes. I thought I should give this to you. Brown gave her an envelope. There was a draft offer letter inside. What does this mean? We need ladies like you in this globalized world. We assumed an immediate notification because we can't afford to let you go to another organization. Her bewilderment at the abrupt shift in attitude was evident. Once your official hiring is confirmed, we'll send you an email with the details of the orientation later. When Hannah realized she had been employed, she was overjoyed. She ran straight to me when she got home. Dad, listen, I got the offer. Sincerely, I was in disbelief. That was the first time I heard of that company making an immediate job offer, but my daughter's name was clearly on the letter. I would eventually come to regret not having looked over the letter carefully at the time. The enthusiasm in our home was palpable on the day of the orientation. Hannah got ready and put on a suit as soon as she woke up. A mixture of anticipation and nervousness was visible on her face. It's time to go. The sight of Hannah in her new attire brought me to tears. Like I had on the day of the interview, I gave her a gentle prod in the rear and watched her go with pride. However, Hannah returned virtually instantly. Have you forgotten anything? The orientation has barely begun. Why have you returned home? No, that's not the case. My ID reads incompetent on it. What? Incapable. My hands shook with rage at the news. With their employee IDs in hand, the newly hired staff members had congregated in the business lobby for the orientation. The new hires came to the gate one by one, presenting their IDs to the reader. However, Hannah was refused access as she attempted to pass through the gate, and an error message abruptly sprang up on the display. Her face became pale as she examined her ID. She was not identified by name. It said, Smith, incompetent. While other staff members hurried over to comprehend the situation, everyone was left in startled silence. Brown then materialized, her heels tapping the ground. I became aware of the circumstance. I apologize. It appears that the ID was issued incorrectly. There is no mention of you among the new hires. What do you mean? Oh, I should have told you. All I offered you in the letter was a verbal commitment and a tentative offer. Not a formal employment offer was made. You don't seem to have understood English. We discovered more capable individuals than you. Hannah couldn't say anything. We made the IDs as a joke, and it accidentally got sent to you. That is really awful. Why would you act in such way? The other workers, who had seen it all, muttered in shock. It's your fault you tried to challenge me. Hannah dropped everything she was carrying and bolted from the scene. After hearing the narrative, I couldn't hold still and immediately went to a specific location. The last-minute arrangements for the orientation were being made behind the scenes. Regarding the earlier events in the lobby, Brown, is everything okay? If the president finds out, that will be a serious issue. It's all right. Not even the president will know. The president's whereabouts and activities are unknown to me. Such unimportant things don't concern him, Brown chuckled. You did that, but why? You might have simply turned her down like normal. Because our company is inundated with applicants who wish to interview. The majority of them are unfit and incompetent for our organization. Conducting interviews and reading resumes is tiresome. The male worker questioned Brown's strategies and attempted to have a moral conversation about the matter. But you didn't have to treat the girl like that. These women who are so fixated on foreigners annoy me. I reasoned that it would be effective if we used her to propagate the notion that this organization shouldn't employ incompetent staff. The heartless Brown attempted to defend her behavior by asking, "Do you really think that's a good way to handle it? It's going to keep the inept ones away, right? It facilitates our work. But you put that girl through a lot. Maybe, but it's necessary for our benefit. Harming people in order to further one's own interests has a detrimental effect on the organization's reputation and culture. I think everyone there felt the same way. Abruptly, a staff member dashed in. Brown, from the General Affairs Department. Mr. Williams. What's going on? Observe this. How did you get here? Mr. Williams displayed a social media post on his smartphone. Brown saw it, and her face went white. What is this? The entire encounter with Hannah had been captured on camera and uploaded to the internet. The nasty comments that followed, such as, "That woman should quit. You're the real incompetent one. Spread this, and she deserves public backlash," were all over the comment area as it immediately went viral. What every employee who saw the situation felt was expressed by the spectators. The footage demonstrated who was actually bad for the business. Brown held it in her hands and hung her head. What actions will we take? It quickly became so popular, and the orientation is set to begin. For now, let's proceed with the orientation as planned to avoid further confusion. As a result, the orientation started later than expected. The ceremony carried on, as if the previous incident had never happened. The new hires were greeted and given words of encouragement. Jones, who took part in the hiring process, provided the address of the representative. "Hello, prospective workers. I'm sorry about the inconvenience previously. However, I think that even in such difficult circumstances, we may grow and learn. We have faith that you will rise above this difficulty, deepen your relationships, and continue." I scoffed at him in silence, seeing how contradictory his remarks were. "We are pleased to have you join our firm as a member today. We genuinely hope that you will grow with us, overcome any challenges, and enjoy the pride and responsibilities that come with being a part of our organization." The entire auditorium broke out in applause. The new hires raised their hands collectively at the pledge ceremony, promising the company commitment and accountability. They inspired everyone in the room with their unwavering resolve and solidarity. Hannah, though, wasn't in the hallway. I was so upset that I was unable to see her grin. Next, we will have a greeting from our president, Mr. Johnson, to the new employees. When my name came up, I went to the podium. That individual was facing the business. Yes, I lead this company as its president. My father is the chairman, by the way. My father was going to make the speech first, but I asked to speak briefly instead. I welcome you all with the utmost warmth. In our organization, ethics are very important. People without morals could be seen as incompatible with our principles. I spoke with emphasis, picturing a specific individual. Always behave honorably and truthfully. This, in my opinion, is essential to the expansion and success of our company. With this, I gave Jones a stare. I had a mental image of his pallid face. I inhaled deeply and carried on. But today, someone behaved inappropriately, and nobody intervened. We don't need people who put their own interests first and ignore problems in this organization. Since this building is going to be demolished, you're all fired. The noise filled the whole hall. I ignored the mutterings behind me and walked off the stage. "President, that was a really inspiring speech." Jones walked over to me and adopted a whole new demeanor. "What?" "I mean, I'm sorry for the hurtful things I said the other day." "She's your daughter." "I never knew that." "So, if she wasn't my daughter, it would be okay to hurt her." I raised my voice and pressed Jones. "No, of course not, but her name." Our marriage ended in divorce. Now that she accompanied my ex-wife, she goes by Hannah Smith. Enough, I see. Give Brown a call. Brown was brought forward. He was hunched down and needed help to stand. "Yes, President, I apologize profusely. Please pardon me. You don't stand a chance. You two have lost your jobs. Leave now and don't return." I therefore let Jones and Brown go. My father, the chairman, gave me a harsh rebuke right away. The lives of our workers and their families are under our control. Avoid making quick decisions. Yes, but those two. Yes, those two can go, but protect the other employees. I will retract it right away. I thus took back my remarks from the orientation and concentrated on ensuring the safety of every employee, aside from Jones and Brown. Not one worker, not even the recent hires, chose to quit in spite of the furor on social media and the company's designation as a black one. We re-examined and clarified the philosophy and values of our business. We started down the path of rebuilding trust by putting these concepts into practice. Furthermore, in order to show the company's dedication to society, we concentrated on community service and social contribution initiatives. In the meanwhile, Jones and Brown went to multiple interviews in search of new jobs. You've worked at a publishing company before, right? I did, indeed. I was formerly employed by a publishing company. I see. It makes sense why the name seemed familiar. People with poor ethics are not hired by us. Kindly depart now. Jones' expression was confused and he was at a loss for words. He felt a mixture of regret and rage as he thought back on his errors. Brown, meantime, was at home, letting out a long sigh as he stared out the window. Like Jones, she had trouble finding a job because of her uncommon name, which became a disadvantage. In addition, the video stayed up online like a digital scar, and she was recognized by people who muttered and stared at her on the street. Brown gradually withdrew from society as a result of this. A year after the event, the public's trust in my company was gradually returning. Hannah made the decision to put herself to the test once more and was able to secure employment on her own. Dad, thank you for standing up for me back then, even threatening to demolish the building. Yes, I may have taken something a little too far. The philosophy of this company has not altered. Our goal is to serve as a link between the United States and the rest of the world, advancing American culture abroad and making sure that Americans are honored and appreciated both at home and abroad.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.